In a busy high school where groups of friends ruled the hallways, there was a girl named Amara. She wasn't like most kids her age. She didn't shout to get attention or try too hard to fit in. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made people notice her even when she wasn't saying much. Her dark braids swung gently as she walked through the crowded corridors, and she always had a book tucked under one arm. Amara was different, not just because of her skin color, but because of how she carried herself. While other students laughed loudly or gossiped about who dated whom, Amara preferred sitting alone during lunch, sketching pictures in her notebook. To some, she seemed mysterious. To others, maybe even a little intimidating. But for the most part, people respected her space. However, not everyone admired Amara's calm nature. Some saw it as weakness. There were 4 students in particular who thrived on making life difficult for anyone they thought was different. These bullies loved picking on kids who were quieter or stood out in any way. They'd push them into lockers, spread mean rumors, or laugh at them behind their backs. It gave these bullies a twisted sense of power, like they mattered more than the people they hurt. At first, Amara didn't think much about the little things. A rude comment here, a shove there, it all seemed harmless enough. She told herself it wasn't worth getting upset over. After all, she'd dealt with worse growing up. So she kept her head down, focusing on her studies and her art. But the bullying didn't stop. In fact, it got worse. One day, someone slipped a note into her locker. It was filled with hateful words meant to cut deep. Another time, fake posts appeared online claiming outrageous lies about her. Still, Amara stayed silent. She refused to let them see her cry or show anger. Deep inside, though, something began to stir. She wasn't sure what it was yet. A mix of frustration, sadness, and maybe even fear. But it was building up every time those bullies crossed her path. Then came the moment that would change everything. One afternoon, after gym class, Amara found herself walking down a deserted hallway. The noise from the main part of the school faded away as she turned a corner. That's when she saw them, the same 4 troublemakers blocking her way. Their smirk said it all. This wasn't going to be another random insult or shove. This time they wanted more. The leader of the group stepped forward, his arms crossed and his expression cocky. "You think you're so tough, huh?" he sneered. Taking another step closer. "Let's see if you can handle us." For a brief second, Amara froze. Her heart raced and her mind scrambled to figure out what to do. But then something clicked inside her. Maybe it was years of being underestimated. Or maybe it was the countless hours she'd spent practicing self-defense without anyone knowing. Whatever it was, it gave her the strength to stand tall instead of backing down. Instead of running or crying, Amara squared her shoulders and looked each bully straight in the eye. Without raising her voice, she spoke firmly. "If you want to fight me," she said, her tone steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her body. "Fine. But I'm warning you, I won't go down easy." Her words caught them off guard. Most kids either cried or ran when confronted like this, but Amara didn't flinch. And before they could fully process what was happening, she dropped her bag and raised her hands into a defensive stance. What followed next shocked everyone, including Amara herself. The hallway was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat feel louder than usual. Amara stood there, her back against the cold, tiled wall, staring down the 4 figures blocking her path. They were bigger, louder, and clearly thought they had the upper hand. But Amara wasn't thinking about size or numbers. She was focused on one thing: survival. The leader of the group smirked, stepping closer with his chest puffed out like he owned the place. "You think you're tough?" he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "Let's see if you can handle all of us." Behind him, the others laughed, egging him on. One of them held a slushy cup in their hand, its bright red liquid sloshing around dangerously. It was clear what they had planned, a cruel prank meant to humiliate her. But instead of showing fear, Amara did something unexpected. She squared her shoulders, tightened her grip on her bag strap, and took a deep breath. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Her words hung in the air, silencing the laughter instantly. For a moment, the bullies looked at each other, unsure how to react. No one had ever talked back to them like this before. Most kids either cried or tried to run, but Amara just stood there, unflinching. Then, without warning, the leader lunged forward, swinging the slushy cup toward her face. But Amara was ready. Years of martial arts training kicked in as she swiftly sidestepped, dodging the attack with ease. The red liquid splashed harmlessly onto the floor, leaving a sticky mess behind. Before the bully could recover, Amara grabbed his wrist and twisted it gently but firmly, forcing him to drop the cup. He stumbled backward, shock written all over his face. "What the—" he started, but Amara didn't give him time to finish. Another bully rushed at her from the side, arms outstretched in an attempt to grab her. With quick reflexes, she spun around and delivered a controlled kick to his leg, sending him stumbling into the lockers with a loud thud. The sound echoed through the empty hallway, making the remaining two hesitate. Amara's movements were precise, calculated, and calm. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She just wanted to protect herself. Every step, every block, every counter-move came naturally to her, like muscle memory taking over. The bullies, who moments ago had been so confident, now looked nervous. Their bravado crumbled under the weight of her determination. One of them, a girl with a scowl, tried to throw a punch, but Amara caught her arm mid-swing and pushed her away gently yet firmly. The girl stumbled back, tripping over her own feet and landing awkwardly on the floor. Her friend, seeing this, backed away slowly, shaking his head. "This isn't worth it," he muttered, already turning to leave. By now the leader, the one who had started everything, was visibly shaken. His initial cockiness had vanished, replaced by confusion and fear. He glanced at his friends, who were either retreating or frozen in place, then back at Amara. "You're crazy," he shouted, pointing a finger at her. But even as he said it, his voice wavered, betraying his panic. Amara didn't respond. She simply stood there, breathing heavily but composed, watching as the group scrambled to get away. Within seconds, they were gone, disappearing around the corner like shadows fleeing the light. The hallway was silent again, except for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above. For a moment, Amara just stood there, letting the reality of what had happened sink in. She hadn't expected things to escalate like that. Sure, she knew how to defend herself. Her parents had insisted she learn self-defense after moving to a new neighborhood, but she never imagined she'd have to use those skills at school. Still, she felt a strange sense of relief. She hadn't let them win. She hadn't given in to their cruelty. As she bent down to pick up her bag, a crowd began to gather. Students who had heard the commotion peeked out from classrooms and doorways, their eyes wide with disbelief. Some clapped quietly, while others whispered among themselves. A few even pulled out their phones, recording videos of the aftermath. Amara ignored them, focusing instead on brushing off her clothes and straightening her braids. Word spread quickly. By the end of the day, everyone knew what had happened. Teachers approached her cautiously, asking for her side of the story. Administrators reviewed security footage which showed the entire incident from start to finish. And online, clips of Amara standing her ground went viral, sparking conversations about bullying and courage. But amidst all the attention, Amara stayed grounded. She didn't want to be seen as a hero or a victim. All she wanted was to move past the incident and focus on what truly mattered: finishing school, pursuing her dreams, and proving that kindness could still exist in a world that often felt harsh and unfair. Little did she know this moment would mark the beginning of something much bigger, not just for her, but for everyone around her. The next day at school felt different. The air buzzed with whispers, and everywhere Amara went, eyes followed her. Some students looked at her with admiration, others with curiosity, and a few even seemed scared. It was strange for Amara. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. Normally she blended into the background, unnoticed and unbothered. But now people stopped mid-conversation when she passed by, trying not to stare but failing miserably. At first, Amara tried to ignore it all. She kept her head down, focusing on getting through her classes like any other day. But avoiding the spotlight wasn't easy. By lunchtime, someone had shared video clips of the hallway incident online and they were blowing up. Comments flooded in from strangers across the country, praising her bravery and calling her an inspiration. Teachers mentioned it during class discussions, saying how important it was to stand up against bullying. Even the principal made an announcement over the intercom, reminding everyone about respect and responsibility. But while most people celebrated Amara's actions, not everyone was happy. The 4 bullies who had tried to jump her were furious. They hadn't expected things to spiral out of control like this. Now, instead of being seen as untouchable, they were the ones being talked about, and not in a good way. Their friends avoided them, embarrassed by association, and teachers kept a close eye on them in class. Worst of all, their parents found out. Rumor had it that one of them got grounded for weeks while another lost privileges like video games and hanging out after school. Still, the bullies weren't ready to admit defeat. When they saw Amara sitting alone in the cafeteria later that afternoon, they decided to try one last time to save face. 2 of them walked over pretending to act casual, while the others hung back near the door watching nervously. "Hey," one of them said, sliding onto the bench across from Amara. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "Look, we need to talk." Amara glanced up from her sketchbook, her pencil pausing mid-stroke. She didn't say anything, just waited for him to continue. Her calm demeanor unnerved him, but he pressed on anyway. "We don't want no trouble, all right? We're done messing with you. Just, can we call it even?" It was clear they weren't apologizing because they felt sorry. They were doing it because they had no choice. The whole school knew what happened, and their reputations were ruined. If they wanted things to go back to normal, they needed Amara to agree to move on. For a moment, Amara considered refusing. She could have easily turned them down, letting them deal with the consequences of their actions, but something stopped her. Looking at them now, slouched and defeated, she realized they weren't so different from anyone else. They were just kids misguided and desperate for attention. Maybe they didn't deserve forgiveness, but holding on to anger wouldn't help either. So, after a long pause, she nodded. "Fine," she said simply, closing her sketchbook and standing up. "But if I catch you bothering anyone else, I won't let it slide again." Her words hit hard. The 2 bullies exchanged uneasy glances before nodding quickly. "Got it," one of them muttered, practically tripping over himself to get away. As they rejoined their group near the door, Amara watched them leave, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. This chapter of her life was finally closing, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that bigger challenges lay ahead. Later that evening, Amara sat on her bed scrolling through her phone. Notifications poured in. Likes, comments, messages from people she didn't even know. Some thanked her for inspiring them to speak up against bullies in their own lives. Others asked for advice on how to handle tough situations. A few local news outlets even reached out asking if she'd be willing to share her story publicly. At first, Amara ignored the requests. She didn't want to become some kind of internet sensation or public figure. All she cared about was finishing high school and figuring out her future. But as she read through the messages, something tugged at her heart. So many people were reaching out, saying her courage gave them hope. For the first time, she realized her actions had impacted more than just her own life. They were touching others too. Her mom knocked softly on the door before stepping inside. "You okay?" she asked, sitting down beside Amara. Amara hesitated, then showed her mom the messages filling her screen. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I just wanted them to leave me alone." Her mom smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair behind Amara's ear. "Sometimes life throws us moments we can't plan for," she said. "What matters is what you do with them. You stood up for yourself when it mattered most. That's powerful, sweetheart. And if your story helps even one person feel stronger, isn't that worth it?" Amara thought about her mom's words long after she left the room. Was it possible to turn something painful into something positive? Could she use this experience to make a difference, not just for herself but for others? By the end of the night, Amara had made up her mind. She replied to a few of the messages, offering kind words and encouragement to those who needed it. Then she drafted an idea for a project, a way to bring her school together and start conversations about bullying, empathy, and kindness. It was still just a rough thought, but it gave her a sense of purpose. Maybe, just maybe, this difficult moment could lead to something meaningful. As she turned off her lamp and settled under the covers, Amara felt a flicker of hope. Life might throw curveballs, but she was learning how to catch them, and sometimes even throw them right back. The next morning, Amara woke up feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was relieved that the bullies had backed off and things seemed to be calming down. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the weight of what had happened, or the growing attention surrounding it. As she got ready for school, she scrolled through her phone again, seeing more messages from people who had been inspired by her story. Some were total strangers, while others were classmates she barely knew. One message stood out. "You showed us that standing up doesn't mean fighting back. It means staying true to yourself. Thank you." Those words stuck with her as she walked into school later that day. The hallways still buzzed with whispers, but now they felt different. Instead of judgmental stares or pitying glances, many students greeted her warmly. A few even stopped her between classes to say how much they admired her courage. It was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. For the first time, Amara realized she wasn't just surviving high school, she was making an impact. But not everything was sunshine and praise. During third period, the principal called her into the office. When she arrived, she found the 4 bullies sitting there too, looking nervous and fidgety. The principal explained that security footage confirmed their role in the incident, showing them cornering Amara and escalating the situation. He asked Amara to share her side of the story, which she did calmly and honestly. She didn't exaggerate or try to paint herself as a victim. She simply told the truth about what happened. When it was the bullies' turn to speak, they tried to downplay their actions at first. They claimed they were only joking around and never meant to hurt anyone. But when the principal played snippets of the hallway footage on his computer screen, their excuses fell apart. You could see their aggressive body language, hear their taunts and watch as they lunged at Amara. There was no denying it. They had crossed a line. Afterward, the principal handed down consequences. 2 of the students received suspensions, while the others were given detention and required to attend counseling sessions on conflict resolution and empathy. They also had to apologize publicly, not just to Amara, but to the entire school community. It was a tough pill for them to swallow, but Amara felt a sense of justice knowing they'd have to face accountability for their actions. As the days passed, life at school began to shift in unexpected ways. People started talking more openly about bullying, not just the obvious stuff like name-calling or shoving, but the subtle forms too, like exclusion or spreading rumors. Teachers held special assemblies where students could voice their experiences and brainstorm solutions together. Even the cafeteria felt less divided, with kids from different cliques sitting together during lunch. It was small progress, but it mattered. Amara noticed these changes and felt proud of her role in sparking them. Still, she couldn't shake the idea that there was more she could do. Her mom's words from the other night echoed in her mind. What matters is what you do with these moments. So she decided to take action. After school one afternoon, she approached her favorite teacher, Ms. Carter, with an idea. "I've been thinking," Amara said, pulling out a notebook filled with scribbled notes. "What if we started something, a program or club where students can learn how to stand up for themselves and each other? Like workshops or activities focused on kindness and understanding?" Ms. Carter smiled, clearly impressed. "That's a great idea, Amara. Schools need more initiatives like that. How can I help?" With Ms. Carter's support, Amara began putting her plan into motion. She reached out to other teachers, student council members, and even some of the quieter kids who rarely spoke up. Together, they came up with a name, Stand Together. The goal was simple: to create a space where everyone felt safe, respected, and empowered to make positive choices. The first event took place 2 weeks later in the auditorium. Amara stood nervously behind the curtain as students filed in, surprised by the turnout. Nearly half the school showed up, curious to see what this new initiative was all about. When it was time for her to speak, Amara stepped onto the stage, gripping the microphone tightly. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. I know a lot has happened recently, and I'm sure most of you are wondering why we're here today. Well, the truth is, none of us should have to deal with bullying alone. Whether it's happening to you or someone else, it affects all of us. That's why I wanted to start Stand Together, to remind ourselves that we're stronger when we work as a team. Her speech went on to explain the purpose of the program, teaching skills like communication, conflict resolution, and self-confidence. She shared her own story, not to glorify it, but to show how standing up for yourself doesn't always mean fighting back physically. Sometimes it's about finding your voice, setting boundaries, or simply refusing to let negativity define you. By the end of her talk, the room erupted in applause. Students cheered, clapped, and even whistled, making Amara blush. She hadn't expected such a warm response. But what touched her most was seeing familiar faces in the crowd. Kids who had once teased her or ignored her now smiling and nodding along. It was proof that change was possible, even in places where it seemed impossible. Over the following weeks, Stand Together became a cornerstone of the school. Workshops were held every Friday after class, covering topics like cyberbullying, peer pressure, and mental health. Guest speakers visited to share their stories, including former victims of bullying who had turned their pain into purpose. Art projects popped up around campus with murals and posters promoting kindness and inclusion. Even the bullies, who had initially resisted the program, started participating, albeit reluctantly. Slowly but surely, they began to understand the harm their actions had caused and worked toward making amends. Amara found herself at the center of it all, guiding the movement while staying true to her quiet nature. She didn't seek the spotlight, but she embraced her role as a leader because she believed in the cause. Every time she saw a student stand up for someone else or heard about friendships forming across divides, she felt a spark of hope. Change wasn't easy, and it certainly didn't happen overnight, but it was happening. One evening, as she packed up her things after another successful workshop, Ms. Carter pulled her aside. "You've done something incredible here, Amara," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "This school needed someone like you, someone brave enough to turn pain into purpose." Amara smiled softly, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "Everyone played a part. I just gave them a reason to care. And maybe that was the biggest lesson of all. Standing up isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about inspiring others to do the same." As the weeks turned into months, Amara began to notice a deeper shift, not just in her school, but within herself. The Stand Together program had become more than just an initiative. It was a movement that was slowly reshaping the culture of the entire student body. Kids who once avoided eye contact in the hallways now exchanged smiles or quick hellos. Cliques that had seemed impenetrable started blending together, with students from different groups sitting together at lunch or teaming up for group projects. Even teachers commented on how much calmer and friendlier the atmosphere felt. But, as proud as Amara was of what she'd helped create, she couldn't help but feel conflicted. She spent so much time encouraging others to stand up against bullying and practice kindness that she sometimes forgot to process her own emotions about everything that had happened. Late at night, when the house was quiet and her thoughts were free to wander, she found herself replaying that day in the hallway over and over again. She remembered the way her heart had raced, the adrenaline coursing through her veins, and the split-second decision to fight back, not out of anger but out of necessity. She thought about how scared she had been, even though she didn't show it. And she wondered if she could have handled things differently, maybe by walking away or finding a teacher instead of confronting them head-on. Would that have made her stronger or weaker? One afternoon, after another Stand Together workshop, Amara stayed behind to clean up the auditorium. Ms. Carter joined her, carrying a box of supplies. They worked in silence for a while, folding chairs and stacking notebooks, until Ms. Carter finally broke the quiet. "You've been quiet lately," she said gently. "Is everything okay?" Amara paused, holding a stack of flyers in her hands. For a moment, she considered brushing off the question with a simple, "I'm fine." But something about Ms. Carter's tone made her stop. She sighed and sat down, on one of the chairs, setting the flyers aside. "I don't know," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I did the right thing, standing up for myself. But other times I wonder if it was worth all this attention. People keep calling me brave, but I don't always feel brave. Sometimes I just feel tired. Miss Carter nodded, pulling up a chair beside her. That's normal, Amara. Change is exhausting, especially when it comes from something painful. You're carrying a lot right now, not just your own experiences, but everyone else's expectations too. That's a heavy load. Amara looked down at her hands, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. It's not just that, she said softly. I keep thinking about those kids, the ones who tried to jump me. What if they hadn't backed off? What if things had gone worse? And why does anyone think it's okay to hurt someone else just because they're different? Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and she quickly looked away, blinking back tears. Ms. Carter reached over and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Those are big questions, Amara. Questions that don't always have easy answers. People hurt each other for lots of reasons, sometimes because they're scared or insecure or jealous. It doesn't make it right, but understanding where it comes from can help us figure out how to stop it. Amara nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. She knew Ms. Carter was right, but it still didn't fully ease the ache inside her. Why? Did life have to be so complicated? Why couldn't people just treat each other with respect? These were questions she'd carried for years, long before the incident in the hallway. Growing up as a black girl in a predominantly white neighborhood, she'd faced her share of challenges. Comments about her hair, assumptions about her background, sideways glances when she walked into a room. None of it had ever broken her, but it had shaped her in ways she was only beginning to understand. Later that evening, Amara sat in her room, staring at the wall. Her mom knocked softly before coming in, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Mind if I join you? She asked, handing one of the mugs to Amara. Sure, Amara replied, scooting over to make space. Her mom settled onto the bed beside her, sipping her drink thoughtfully. You've been working hard lately, her mom said after a moment. Your dad and I are really proud of you. Amara shrugged, tracing the rim of her mug with her finger. I don't know if I'm doing enough, she admitted. There's still so much hate out there, so much division. How do we fix that? Her mom sighed, leaning back against the wall. You can't fix everything, sweetheart, not on your own. But what you can do is plant seeds. Every act of kindness, every conversation, every time you choose to stand up, it's like planting a seed. Some will grow quickly and others might take longer. But eventually, those seeds turn into something beautiful. Amara thought about that for a long time. Planting seeds. It was such a simple idea, yet it gave her a sense of hope. Maybe she couldn't change the world overnight, but she could keep trying. One small step at a time. The next day at school, Amara decided to focus on the positive. She spent her lunch break sketching ideas for a new mural to paint in the courtyard. A colorful design featuring intertwined hands and uplifting quotes about unity and courage. When a few classmates noticed what she was working on, they offered to help. By the end of the week, a whole group of students had volunteered to bring the mural to life. As they worked together, painting bold strokes of color across the blank wall, Amara felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about all of them. Each brushstroke was a reminder that even in a world full of challenges, there was beauty to be found. And maybe, just maybe, that beauty could inspire others to keep fighting for a better tomorrow. By the time the mural was finished, it had become a symbol of everything the Stand Together program stood for. Students posed for photos in front of it, tagging their posts with the Stand Together online. Teachers praised it during assemblies, saying it represented the kind of community they wanted to build. Even the principal mentioned it in his monthly newsletter, calling it a testament to the power of collaboration and compassion. For Amara, seeing the mural completed felt like closure, not just for the incident in the hallway, but for all the struggles she'd faced along the way. She realized that standing up for herself hadn't just been about survival, it had been about creating space for others to thrive. And in doing so, she had discovered a strength she never knew she had. As she stood back and admired the finished piece, a classmate approached her, smiling shyly. Hey, Amara, he said. Thanks for everything you've done. You've made a real difference here." Amara smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "We all did," she replied. "This wasn't just me. It was all of us." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it. The final weeks of the school year flew by faster than anyone expected. As summer approached, the halls buzzed with excitement, students counting down the days, teachers wrapping up lessons, and everyone looking forward to a break from routines. For Amara, though, this time felt bittersweet. She knew she had accomplished something incredible with Stand Together, but it also meant saying goodbye to the place where so much growth had happened. Not just for her, but for everyone around. Her graduation day arrived, bright and warm, with clear blue skies stretching endlessly above the football field where the ceremony was being held. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, each one occupied by a student in their cap and gown. Parents, siblings, grandparents, and friends crowded onto the bleachers, cameras ready to capture every moment. The air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass and sunscreen, mixing with the nervous energy that always came with endings and new beginnings. When Amara's name was called, she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, her braids swaying gently with each step. The crowd erupted into cheers, not just polite applause but loud, heartfelt shouts of support. Some people even stood up, clapping wildly as if they couldn't contain their admiration. Amara scanned the audience, spotting her, Mom wiping away tears and her dad beaming with pride. Her heart swelled, knowing how far she'd come since the beginning of the year. As she returned to her seat, clutching her diploma tightly, she glanced around at her classmates. Many of them smiled back at her, some nodding in acknowledgement. Even kids who had once ignored her or teased her now looked at her with respect. It wasn't just about what she'd done in the hallway months ago. It was about the ripple effect it had created. Stand Together had taught them all that kindness wasn't weak. It was powerful. And courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about doing the right thing even when you were scared. After the ceremony ended, families spilled onto the field to take pictures and celebrate. Amara posed with her parents first, laughing as her little brother photobombed every shot by making silly faces behind her. Then came her friends, the ones who had helped paint the mural, organized workshops, and brainstormed ideas late into the night. They hugged her tightly, promising to stay in touch no matter where life took them next. One by one, other students approached her, thanking her for inspiring them. A shy girl from her math class told her she finally felt brave enough to report the bullying she'd endured for years. A boy who used to sit alone at lunch said he now had a group of friends because someone reached out after hearing his story during a Stand Together session. Each person's words reminded Amara why she had pushed through the tough moments, even when she doubted herself. Later, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light over the field, Amara found herself sitting on the bleachers with Ms. Carter. They talked quietly, reflecting on everything that had changed since the start of the school year. "You've left a legacy here, Amara," Ms. Carter said, smiling warmly. "Not many students can say they transformed an entire school culture." Amara shook her head modestly. "It wasn't just me. Everyone played a part. I just gave them a reason to care." Ms. carefully tilted her head, studying Amara thoughtfully. "Maybe. But sometimes giving people a reason is the most important thing you can do. You showed them what's possible when we choose empathy over cruelty. That's not something they'll forget anytime soon." Amara didn't respond right away. Instead, she gazed out at the field, watching groups of students laugh and hug and take selfies. She thought about the mural, the workshops, the conversations that had sparked meaningful change. Most of all, she thought about the hallway incident, the moment that had forced her to dig deep and find strength she didn't know she had. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. "Do you think things will stay like this?" Amara asked after a while. "Or will everything go back to how it was once we're gone?" Ms. Carter sighed, considering the question. "Change isn't permanent unless people work to maintain it. But I believe the seeds you've planted will keep growing. Some might struggle, but others will flourish. Either way, you've made a difference, and that's something no one can take away from you." Those words stayed with Amara as she drove home later that evening, the tassels from her graduation cap dangling from her rearview mirror. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends and family congratulating her, but she turned off the notifications, wanting a moment of quiet reflection. She thought about the future, college, new challenges, unknown opportunities. There would be hard days ahead, she was sure of it. Life wasn't perfect and neither was she. But she also knew she carried something invaluable inside her: resilience. She had faced fear and uncertainty and come out stronger on the other side. More importantly, she had shown others that they could too. That night, as she packed up her room for college, Amara stumbled upon an old sketchbook. Flipping through its pages, she saw drawings from years past. Scenes of loneliness, frustration, hope, and determination. At the very end, she found a blank page. Smiling to herself, she grabbed a pencil and sketched something new. A tree with deep roots and sprawling branches, surrounded by tiny figures planting seeds beneath it. Beneath the drawing, she wrote 3 words: "Keep growing strong." It was a reminder, for herself and for anyone else who might need it, that standing together wasn't just about surviving the storms of life. It was about learning to thrive, even when the ground beneath your feet felt shaky. And as long as there were people willing to plant seeds of kindness, courage, and understanding, the world would always have a chance to become a better place. Amara closed the sketchbook, feeling lighter than she had in months. Tomorrow was a new chapter full of possibilities, and she was ready to face it, not alone, but alongside everyone who believed in the power of standing together.